welcome to the Peyton Family Reunion 2014. Since we're supposed to honor one of our relatives who we think had a large influence on our lives, I have chosen to honor my uncle Freddie Peyton. And the reason why I decided to honor Freddie was because of the type of person that he was. You know, he possessed a lot of wisdom. It was easy for him to talk to him. You know, he was a real good guy. Somebody who I looked up to and admired a whole lot, cared deeply about, and I cherished all of the advice and the moments of time that I had with him. You know, I have to tell you about my Uncle Freddie. He was a mischievous type of guy. You know, I knew him when, I guess, probably since the time I was about 4 or 5 years old. And at the time, Freddie was about maybe 7 or 8 years older than me. So he was still in his adolescent years at that time. He had a lot of friends. He was real popular, real flashy type guy, you know, like back in the 60s and stuff. He always had the latest fashions of clothes, and, you know, he just had all the right moves and stuff, you know. Plenty of girls, real popular on school campus. Everybody liked him. And he took up a hobby of cutting hair. You know, I mean, he never went to a barber school or any kind of beauty school or anything like that. But he could cut all the latest and greatest hairstyles, or he could create them. And most of the young people in the small town I grew up in, they came to him to get a haircut. And in doing so, a lot of the guys, you know, either they were around his age or just like me, you know, younger, that married him a whole lot, they would like share their experiences with him, you know, and ask advice from him, you know. And I'd be sitting around listening to all this stuff, all this talk going back and forth. I guess it's just like any other barbershop, you know. The barbershop is like a bartender where he knows everybody's business, and he's like an unlicensed psychiatrist, a psychoanalyzer. But anyway, that's the type person Freddie was. You know, he was someone who everybody looked up to and admired. And he was never a criminal. You know, my grandmother never had any trouble with him in the law, but he was mischievous. Oh boy, he was mischievous. I mean, I remember when I was in maybe, I guess, the third, fourth grade, going to school, and at that time, you know, all the grades went to the one school, from 1 through 12. And I remember looking across the schoolyard from a distance, and I seen somebody walking into the main building, and he had an odd type of hat on his head, you know, from the distance where I would look like a hat. And a lot of kids were standing around talking, "Who is that? Who is that?" Somebody said, "That's Freddie Peyton." So you see, what had happened was the school principal had issued an instruction over the intercom system that the African bush hairdo would no longer be allowed at the school. In essence, they you know, it ended up being an afro, and it had just became popular style, fashion and stuff. And the principal didn't like it. Most older folks at that time, back in the 60s, they didn't like the long hair thing, you know. They thought it made us look stupid. But anyway, when that order went out that afternoon after school, my uncle had folks lined up at my grandmother's house, inside, outside, waiting around to get the haircut. So I don't know what time it was when he finally finished cutting the hair that night. It was past my bedtime. And the next day, everybody had to show up at school with a haircut. And it was my uncle who, being in his mischievous and defiant ways and stuff, he showed up at school with a mohawk. And he walked right into the main building, which he had to pass by the principal's office to get in there. And the principal, next thing I know, from the distance where I was standing, I see the principal leading him back out of the building and pointing his hand at him and just telling him something. I couldn't make out what it was. So anyway, after school was over with, I go home and come to find out that my Uncle Freddie got kicked out of school that day because he came to school wearing that mohawk. And my grandmother, man, she was fired up. She was just so mad. And my aunt who raised me, I remember hearing her asking Big Mama, saying, Mama, did you know that Freddie left here this morning looking like that with his hair cut like that? And my grandmother said there ain't no way in the world I'd have ever let him out this house looking like that. But anyway, that's the kind of uncle that Freddie was. That's the kind of person he was, you know. He was just, like I say, mischievous, you know. If we were in a school assembly in the auditorium or something like that, and someone's on the stage giving a speech, and the place is quiet, everybody's listening to the speech, and all of a sudden you might hear a big loud whoop or something, you know, some kind of loud noise. Usually you can bet on it being Freddie Payton that caused that. But that's the kind of person he was. But Freddie, you know, he grew out of that. You know, he became a machine operator on the railroad after he graduated out of school. He married a beautiful wife, Elaine. They raised 3 beautiful children, and they have some real good grandkids and stuff. And he became a preacher. He founded his own church and everything. Had a great following and stuff. And I guess about 3 years ago, he was diagnosed with stomach cancer. And about a year or so later, he passed on. And I never will forget him. And he surely did give me a lot of good advice coming up. You know, he answered questions. He gave me answers to my questions that I'd never even considered. And a lot of times it turned out to be the right way for me to do things, for me to go. And I just appreciate having him in my life, and he'll always be a part of me. And I really want to pay homage to him because he was a great guy.